Thanks
we're
for
giving it
inviting.
5 minutes for people to connect. We've got about 53 participants. All right, so we'll just get started now. So let me share my, let's see here. Okay, so, all right, are you able to? All right, so welcome everyone. We have, let's see here, it looks like we have people will be joining slowly. It's Ray Garcia. I'm presenting today. We have 2 hours of session today and 2 hours of session tomorrow. Thanks everyone for, thanks everyone to the panelists for joining. Thanks also to the participants for signing up. The course, the session is focused on entrepreneurship for scientists and technologists, of which I am one. I am within that community of folks for many years. Have been a software developer in the past. My first startup, I wrote all the code, most of the code with a team. Eventually, that company had 300 people and we had lots of developers. So I do consider myself a bit of a hardcore techie, but then through my journey became, stopped identifying myself as a software developer and slowly identified myself as an entrepreneur. And that's kind of what we're going to talk about over the next 2 days. How does someone within a research community, with academia, within the tech community how do they go from this notion of identifying themselves in some particular way, researcher, scientist, developer, or other, right? And how do they adopt this sort of persona of being entrepreneurs, and that then allows them to have a journey in an economic life in the circumstances that we find ourselves in globally. I'm sure many of the participants are joining thinking about their careers within academia, careers in industry. We have a few folks who are from within industry already. We have also people who are faculty at university, but for the most part, the audience comes from the community of high performance computing, which are researchers who are either PhD candidates and or others, postdocs, various various participation. And I'm sure that they're participating in this session in order to think about what alternative careers do I have? Because if academia is contracting and there are fewer and fewer jobs in academia, fewer and fewer sources of funding, and then because of the global conditions where our industry is retrenching, then where do I go? How do I make a life? How do I make an economic life with the skills that I have? And how do I venture into considering other alternatives? So in this particular slide, in the upper links, you can see my links to a series of books that I wrote. Those books are oriented towards teaching teachers how to teach entrepreneurship. But in doing so, and that came out of experience as an entrepreneur and then experience in teaching within a university setting, within the School of Economics, the University of Pisa, and then also helping to start a program for PhD candidates to consider alternative careers as entrepreneurs. Gabriel happens to be one example. One of my former students who is now an entrepreneur, Emanuele Angioni, was a speaker in that program, and him and I met many years ago and have been involved in many of the companies that have spun out of that program. Warren Sample, who's also a panelist today, is an entrepreneur formerly from within a large corporation, and then became an entrepreneur, a similar journey to myself, and he's a business partner of mine now in the second venture that we're doing together. And they will each talk about their journeys, sort of along the way. Very available, open to any entrepreneurs there that find the session interesting and want to continue. We have people from many institutions in many countries who are participating. I would say that you can't learn entrepreneurship in an hour or 2 hours, right? It's not a topic that lends itself to slides and instruction. To become an entrepreneur, it's like becoming an artist or a musician. You need to get a pen, you need to get a brush, you need to get a piano, you need to get a drum, start banging, right? And so what I try to do in this short period of time, we have a 2-day session. First day session, I'm going to get right to the point, which is to be an entrepreneur. One, you have to identify yourself as an entrepreneur. If you're unwilling to say you're an artist, then you're not going to be an artist, right? If you're unwilling to say you're an entrepreneur, then you're not going to be one, right? It's not something else, it's not other, it's you, okay? And then, so that's the first part. The second part, to get right to the point, is sales, 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 sales. I can't emphasize this more. If you cannot sell, you will never be an entrepreneur. Forget your crazy idea, forget a startup, forget alternative journeys, and forget about advancing in your career and thriving in an economic life. If you cannot sell yourself, if you cannot sell your ideas, if you cannot get someone to pay you money for something, then you're going to be subject to working for a large corporation or institution. Good luck to you. Great getting a job, and good luck surviving in those institutions in that job for very long, given the chaos that we're in globally, right? So the reason why I say that is in my own journey, I worked within 4 of the largest banks in the world. I became an entrepreneur, not out of necessity, but out of choice. I come from a very humble background. I ended up having a career as an executive, working on Wall Street, nice office overlooking the East River, very comfortable, top floor of the building. And then I realized one day that this is probably not going to last. I probably got as high as I could in a large corporation. And while it was very comfortable and I had made a good living and had saved lots of money, that this was not going to be the end, and that I needed to do what my parents had done, which is move to the US and then struggle and become an entrepreneur. What I started to understand is that entrepreneurship is something, it's a human endeavor. It's what we all do, okay? Fortunately, I have had the luxury of traveling globally to many countries, having many experiences. And one wonderful thing that I've encountered, be it in New York City, Milan, Cape Town, Delhi, Taizhou in China, you pick the place, right? Cancun, Mexico. I mean, even in very remote places, people survive by selling, right? So even myself as a child, coming from a humble background, I saw my parents couldn't get a job, couldn't work their way in the economy. So what did they do? Make things, and they'll go on the streets and sell them, right? And so this is something that all humans do. And then when you go into economies, advancing economies, frontier economies, emerging economies, as call it what you wish, you see it directly. So when you go into the marketplace, what I find wonderful and what really reminded me of why I needed to become an entrepreneur is when I encountered the marketplace and I had little kids, 5 years old, 6 years old, right, coming with something, right? They see a tourist. That tourist has got money in their pocket, right? And their view is that money in your pocket as a tourist, Mr. Tourist, is going to end up in my pocket somehow because I'm going to get you to buy this little squiggly thing. all right? And this is natural. This is what all humans do. Unfortunately, within this community, if each of you are getting an advanced degree, you come from some luxury and you come from some means. Regardless of where you live, we have 35 countries represented. Each country has its wonderful culture and it has its economic situation. If you're on this call, you are part of the global elite and privileged people who have an opportunity to make a difference in other people's lives, right? But what I understood, right, as an executive in a bank, is that if I couldn't sell this little squiggly thing, I didn't understand my own humanity and I couldn't connect to the rest of the world, okay? So this is the key thing. Sell the squiggly thing, reclaim your humanity, and declare yourself and your economic life as an entrepreneur, all right? So that's my journey. That's my epiphany. That was my moment, right, of going from comfort to discomfort. So of course, my journey went from that, you know, several startups of my own, some failures, some successes. Obviously, I've had some successes in order to be in a situation that I'm in now, again, of comfort, but comfort came out of a journey of comfort, pain, comfort, right? And now I continue to challenge myself, and I never allow myself to end up or think that I have a comfortable economic situation. I'm always working, always striving. I work every day. I connect with people. I help other people launch companies, start companies. That is, to me, being human and creating value for others. So now, the last 10 years, what I've done is focus my attention on trying to find as many entrepreneurs, help them through their journey to launch companies, to then solve the big problems we have in the world. All right, so as a result of that, I ended up being on the advisory board of a large business school, ended up spending a lot of time in Europe within a university setting, finding lots of really smart people and helping them get through their journey. I wrote a bunch of books on my own experiences. I understood that I had to, in writing those books, I thought I knew what I was talking about. Writing a book is really difficult. Editing is really even harder. And then putting that into practice and trying to help other people, right, teach. Okay, so so that's a little bit of my journey. The folks that I invited, as I explained, come from various backgrounds. And let's see here. So now, so the first thing that I want to focus on, getting back to the document, let's see here. Okay, first thing is, all right, so we'll go through this. All right, so I asked Ineco to send out a survey to everyone. What's interesting to me is that hopefully everyone that signed up got that email. I don't know that everyone did, but hopefully they did. And out of, what, of 280 people, right, 2 people responded to the survey. This is not unusual, by the way. When I give these talks, whether it's Europe or the US, I ask how many entrepreneurs in the room, nobody raises their hand. Maybe there's one, okay? When I've done these programs in large banks, right, with sometimes 4, and this is a program that Emmanuel is involved in. I won't name the bank, but him and I speak at this annual session, week-long session of 40 of the best startups probably across Europe. They have 900 submissions, and we are mentors in that program. And these are entrepreneurs with startup programs. And I asked them, how many entrepreneurs in the room? How many salespeople? Very few people raised their hands, okay? Emmanuel knows very well that before the program, the best people will contact me before the program. And those are the people that become highly successful, right? He knows this, and I've done this for years, right? It never surprises me that in this kind of program, everybody has my information. They got the survey. They could get my attention, right? One person out of the 280 people contacted me. Now that person is invited to speak tomorrow, because obviously, well, two actually. One was faculty, and another one was ran a business. And you'll get to see tomorrow how an entrepreneur thinks, all right? So that really emphasized to me, there's many things I can talk about, but that really emphasized to me that this group who has an opportunity to pitch and sell to their peers did not take that opportunity, right? As an entrepreneur, anyone who will listen, even if you don't want to listen, I'm going to get in your face and I'm going to sell you something, right? As I explained this, right? So in order to emphasize this, I'm going to now go through something really, really basic for the audience, which is, why do you have to sell? Why do you have to pitch, right? Yes, you're doing poster sessions. I understand that, right? That's techies selling to techies, other techies who have no money, who don't sign checks, right? So that's fine to get accolades from your peers. It's fine to build up your reputation within academia or within industry and get lots of pats on the back about how smart you are, right? But that's not going to make you any money, and that's not going to solve any really big problems, right? So I need to get the audience to the point where by the end of the session today, we're going to send out the survey again, which is probably by the end of tomorrow, and this always happens, right? It goes from very few people responding. Well, the real entrepreneurs who know how to make money, they respond immediately. They contact me, they'll contact Warren, Manuel, they won't hesitate, they go right for it, right? And usually what happens is at the end of 2 days, a bunch of people will try to contact me. I'm very open, I support entrepreneurs, I understand the journey, I understand the hesitancy, I understand people not wanting to expose themselves, being vulnerable. If you're going to succeed in life, you need to take a chance and you need to be vulnerable. You need to put yourself out there, and you need to be willing for people to say, that's a dumb idea, and you're going to go and do it anyway. Okay? So again, why do you have to pitch? Okay? So before I go through this presentation, let me ask, is Gabriel still on, or did we lose him?
He's here.
Oh, there you go. Okay, so let's start with Gabriel Kelly, because Gabriel comes from, he is very much like the audience, right? I met him when he was still doing his studies to get his PhD in management engineering. Right? He had taken all the accounting classes, all the engineering classes, all the design classes. Then he sat in my session, right? And so and now you're an entrepreneur, you have your own company, you're about to close funding, right? So you've gone through the whole journey. And even now, right, it's still, you understand the struggle of selling, right? Can you explain to the audience, why is it necessary to pitch and to sell? I want to hear your opinion first, and then I ask Warren and Emanuele, and then we'll go over the presentation.
Okay, so hi everyone. Still, like, after 4 months and even more lockdown, I'm still, it's still like not easy to talk in front of a screen where you don't see the audience, you know. And Ray has been one of the ones that for sure inspired me and taught me how important it is to, you know, see the faces of the audience and the feedback. So first of all, thanks for inviting me here. Why I think that sales and selling is really important, and learning how to sell is really important. Well, I realized that one day that I actually realized that when I was thinking that I was selling something and I was trying to sell something. What I was actually doing is that I was trying to tell a story that was that would have been the story that would have sounded the best for me and not for the other person, for my potential customer. So the key point here when you talk about selling, in my point of view, is to realize that for selling something, you need to make sure that the other person is realizing what you're talking about. So for doing so, there is, in my opinion, only one way, that is realizing that the first thing that you should do is you being able to listen to the other person. So, and that seems something that is easy to do and to understand, but believe me, and to me, at least, it took me really a lot to realize that the only thing I should be doing, it was starting listening to the other person and listening and trying to understand, because else you're not actually selling something to him, you're not fulfilling a need for your potential customer, you're just fulfilling your need to tell something to somebody else, hoping that the other person has enough time for listening to your story. But actually it's you that you should listen to the story of the other person, and then trying to see if you have something to feel. So that was really the moment that I realized, and why I think it's really important.
Yeah, the audience is everything. And now we have a situation where we can't see the audience. So we're trying to sell the idea of selling to an audience we can't see. And the audience, we have no idea what the demographics are, right? So this is particularly difficult, but we're going to do it anyway, right? And we're going to innovate. And so, Emanuele, I want to hear from you. I want to throw out the idea, because this is something that you do extremely well, and I also have observed it when you've done your talks, and then I actually adopted it from you, which is the notion of listening while you talk, right? And so making a presentation. So I used to do, as Gabriele knows, the first time I presented at the University of Pisa, I did a 3-hour talk. And then at the end, I asked any questions. And the first question was, can we have a break to go to the bathroom? Because I had done the lecture thing, the talking head, super dense slides, 100 slides. Every slide had too many words in it. And then I learned very quickly that's not the way to do this, right? And so I also saw Emanuele presenting, and it's like, oh, okay, visual, and then very sparse. And then this way, when you're presenting, you're actually listening to the body language and listening to the audience. So Emanuele, can you talk about sort of selling and pitching to an audience while you're listening, right? Because this is something that Gabriele is saying, you got to listen, but obviously listening to what if there's no one there, right? So how do you listen while you speak?
So first and foremost, thank you very much for inviting me, and I hope that you can get the audio really well, because I had some issues with my connection in the last couple of days. So I would say that Gabriele is absolutely right. When it comes to sell something, you have to listen for 80% of the time, but you have to be an active listener. It's not just being there, mirroring the body language and nodding all the time. You have to be an active listener. You need to understand what are the real pain points and needs of your client or your customer, regardless of the fact that you're selling, let's say, a product or a service. Then the other thing is to interact with your audience. So if today, let's say the objective was to sell our experience, our vision, the way we became entrepreneurs is a matter of understanding the audience and to use, as Ray was saying, the good visual narrative even for this presentation where we don't have our audience. But Ray told me, look, it's a group of highly intelligent people with an academic background. So you need to catch their attention, but at the same time, you don't have to be too much academic. So what I did was visual. So if you can see it, I presume you are recording. That's my business card.
Oh, okay.
My name is Emanuele Angione. We're gonna connect over LinkedIn all together. Then when it comes to an entrepreneur, So the first and foremost is all about the mindset. And now I'm going to present a list of books that I want to recommend to all of you guys. So you have to have the right mindset. You have to have a lot of grit, because to be an entrepreneur means you have to do things, and sometimes you have to fail and learn from your mistakes. And you don't have to be, let's say, scared or concerned to take risks. Then you need a lot of focus, because it's like, you know how they say in Harvard, they say, do the right thing, do things right, right? So to apply that kind of methodology, you have to be really focused. And then if you want to have someone who went to Harvard and thought that the MBA was completely useless, that's the book for you. It takes a tribe by this English guy who went to Harvard doing an MBA, and everybody was telling him, no, you're not going to do it. This is not feasible. You're not going to be successful. He decided to become an entrepreneur, and he succeeded, despite all the negative comments from our friends in Harvard.
Sorry, Emanuele, if you can send me the list of those books. I haven't read any of them, but they're all interesting. I think the book on grit is that the book by Duckworth? So yeah, all right, you can send me the list, because I actually want to hear from. So summarizing what Emanuele said, right? There's active listening, imitate the body language. So it's very, very important. Unfortunately, we can't do the imitation because of the online forum. And then interact with the audience. We'll have some polls later on in order to get some feedback from the audience. And then he focused on 4 things, which is the mindset, which is what we're addressing now. Focus, focus, focus. And I'm saying focus sales, mindset sales, focus sales. Grit means put yourself out there, fail, 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 succeed, succeed, right? And then it takes a tribe, meaning you can't do it by yourself, right? So you have to do it with others. You've got to practice with others. Start with your mother, start with your father, start with your brother, start with your kids, start with your friends and peers, right? Convince them to buy the little thing from you, right? And of course, your mother's always going to buy it from you, right? But you can build on success, right? And so Warren, why don't we talk about, because in our case, you know, we had a business together and we were trying to actually sell, similar to this situation, right? You and I started the business together with Michael and others, out of Turku, Finland, and we were targeting Indonesia using resources from wherever, and you know, and I actually never went to Indonesia. I'm not sure. I guess you went to Indonesia a few times, but we actually sold, right, by way of, well, Michael was there traveling back and forth, but you were actually selling remotely without even seeing the people, right? And so, you know, it's similar to this situation, right? And you were able to grow that business to a substantial business. Yeah, so how do you sell without even seeing the people?
Yeah, thank you, Ray, for that, and thank you for the opportunity to join the panel. I think before I answer that quickly, I just want to hit something on what Gabriel and Emmanuel were talking about. There's a great word out there for everybody who's got a product, and it's called market fit. But market fit is not just about the product you're selling. Even think about when you're talking to investors or team members or anybody, really what you're trying to do, to the point of Gabriel, was you're trying to make your conversation a market fit for your listener. And I've got a background myself in business and psychology, and something that served very well is always keep in mind when you are communicating exactly that you're listening while you're talking, which is a difficult task to master. But it is because you need to find the market fit for the people you are trying to sell to, trying to convince, trying to show them that your thinking or your doing is going to be a benefit to them. And that's why they either want to invest or listen or, you know, join the train. But I think that market fit works both for products and also for just basic communication. And there's some interesting statistics out there in psychology. We're all guilty of this, that most people, if we're having a conversation, whether it's an argument like these days on social media, or whether it's actually some kind of conversation, most of the time when somebody else is speaking, I'm probably thinking about, what am I going to rebuttal? What am I going to counter with to get back to my same ideal instead of listening. And if you're not listening, you're not picking up on the cues that you need to sort of impact your sort of recipient of your message, and you're probably not going to make progress. And while I'll conclude this part of the story and answer your question, right? You know, one of the things that I kind of wonder about too is, like, we're all human. We all get frustrated when we don't get our point across, or people don't have time to listen. There's a lot of noise out there, and it's very important to think about the signal you're sending and how that signal is on the same frequency of the receiver. And I'm not saying that's the same formula for everywhere, and that's why this is both an art and a science to be able to communicate effectively, but it's something that entrepreneurs need to understand to pick up the cue of their crowd or audience and be able to deliver the right messages to the right people in order to gain the common benefit. And that to me is a wider definition of business. If you are in business with somebody and not being able to official agreement, you know, to conduct business, it's the same thing. If you can't do that with people that you're trying to convince, it's going to be a losing battle. And how many good ideals out there, really creative, really clever ideals that have never made it to quote unquote market fit because they just weren't sold right. Think about all the progress we've lost. Okay.
Yeah. So Warren, we actually, you and I mean, the current business we're doing, we have multiple presentations depending on the audience, right? We have one. Correct. We have one way to sell, and we go either way, right? We either go a vision sale in terms of what we're trying to do in developing an entire market, or we go highly technical, right? So because we've had an audience which was, you know, some of the leading scientists in the world, and for that audience, you know, talking about economics is not going to get their appeal. We talk about optimization, we talk, you know, massive computation, scaling, and we go right to the technical language, and then we bring them up to where we want from the business perspective. When we've talked to people from the business world, we take them from that, and then we try to bring them into sort of the how things work, and then that builds up credibility. So
know your market
matters, the audience matters.
Audience. Correct.
So I'm going to go over the presentation very quickly, and then we'll talk. Then we'll do a poll, and then we'll have another discussion. So what's the point, right? The purpose of the pitch is to pitch. Circular, it's fractal, right? It's defining things by its own in its own terms, right? It's basically what I'm. You know, it's a little bit of humor, right? But the thing is that the point is that as you do it, you're basically practicing something that all humans do, and the more you do it, 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 right? And you can only learn it by actually doing it. Now, as I said before, many of us in this community we're very fortunate to be in academia and have lots of opportunities in our lives. But when you strip that back and you get to the commonality of what we have with, you know, the billions of people that are on the planet, right? They're all trying to survive, and they're all trying to basically get money to get transferred for value that they've created, right? And so, first thing is, tell your story. Do not let others define your story. This is really critical. Every opportunity that I have, I grew up in New York City. I come from a certain ethnicity that has some challenges, that still have challenges in the US. I don't let anyone define me. I define myself. Every opportunity I have to create and craft my own narrative about who I am, what I'm about, what's important to me, I take it, right? And I don't allow anyone else to tell my story or to make assumptions or have biases about me. So, and I learned that very early on as a child. So you always want to be able to tell your story. Don't let other people define who you are. In talking and selling, it shapes your thinking. So as Emanuele and Gabriele and Warren articulated, as you listen and as you speak, you bounce off of other people, and it helps to shape and reformulate your assumptions, right? And so that's part of the listening, that's part of the speaking, that's part of getting people to respond to what you're saying. Hey, that's a crazy idea, it'll never work. Oh, but why won't it work, right? I think I can work, right? Or that's a brilliant idea, I actually might try to do that myself, right? And so it's about basically shaping your thinking, it's testing, right? Testing your lunacy. Right? So if you want to try to do something really, you want to do something extraordinary with your life, you're bordering on trying to solve problems that hadn't been solved before, right? If you're in academia and you're doing research and you're writing papers, you're doing stuff, you're venturing into territory that no one stepped into. So in some sense, that is an area of discomfort, and it's essentially testing your lunacy, right? In talking to other people, you basically get other people to do work for you. Now, this is not exploit. I'm not suggesting you exploit other people at all, right? But in getting people to respond to you, you're basically, they're giving you attention credits. They're giving you time. They're giving you they're giving time that they can never get back, right? In their comments, in some sense, they're offering you advice and work and perspective. It's invaluable, right? You can also, in our community, there's open source, you can formulate, get other people essentially to participate. Now, you have to give something to that community, and then that community may reciprocate, right? But if you don't tell your story, if you don't go on a mission, if you don't get them to adopt or share your perspective, your point of view on the world, it's unlikely that you're going to be able to be successful. As Emmanuel highlighted, it takes a tribe. You got to find people who will buy, right? If no one buys your idea and you're not creating customers, then you probably shouldn't pursue it. So unless you're out there talking about things that you think matter to you, based on things that you can do with yourself, problems you can solve with your colleagues, with the resources that you have available, you need to find the customers first before you actually go about spending the next 5 years writing some brilliant piece of software that nobody wants or no one's going to pay for, right? And too much of our community of techies, and I'm guilty of this as well, right? Venture onto brilliant ideas, and we spend a lot of time, but we have no customers, right? So find the customers first. When you get somebody to buy into the idea on paper, then you go and you execute. Declare success. People believe the product exists. I mean, you see this in all the large corporations. They make announcements a year, 2 years, 3 years in advance of the actual product, right? They start to prime the audience for what is to come. So in pitching and selling your future, selling your vision, selling how you think the world can be better, helps realize it. You're essentially declaring success, right? You're putting aside your fear of failure. You're putting aside things that prevent you from moving forward, right? And you do this naturally. There's no way that you could have gone through university if you didn't declare that you were going to succeed in your studies. You're going to declare that you will get a PhD. Eventually, you will figure it out. You're stepping into unknown. And when you go into this and you go into business, you need to basically declare the success. People will believe the product exists. And then the challenge is, forgive the language for a moment, the oh shit moment, like everyone believes that everyone's buying into it. Now you've got to do it, right? And so you only want to do this if you actually can execute on it and you have the resources and the people to do it. Snack moments, right? People don't remember things. We have conversations all day long. We read tons and tons of things. The only thing that you're going to remember, I'm 62 years old, I would say maybe less than 1% of my entire life I have any recall for, right? So unless you're going to put something out there that is an episodic moment, right? Something that will really jolt the person to think about things in a way that they had not thought about, right? That you're going to declare you're going to solve a really hard problem that someone may not even have been aware of was an issue. But once they're aware of it, it's like, oh, wow, if you can solve that, my life would be better, or everyone's life would be better. So you've got to create episodic moments in the minds of the audience. This is imagining the form and discussing and talking to people, and you're shaping your thinking. You actually imagine and create jointly with the customer some form, some shape, some process, you get some reaction, right? This is more so for tangible products, but it also applies to intangible digital products, which do have a form. Unfortunately, it's only two-dimensional, but in the future, with other technologies that are emerging, the human mind is going to perceive this form in multiple dimensions. You got to attract fans, right? So if you notice in academia, what happens is the loud voice gets the attention. And I've seen this over the course of many years, where people in academia are generally, well-intentioned, but there's someone who goes out there and popularizes the research of others. And then the academic community says, well, they wrote a book, but that's my work, that's somebody else's. Yeah, but you didn't go and tell everyone about it. So you're just talking to your peers. It didn't do anything for society. So there's always going to be someone who basically take the work, popularize it, bring it into society, make it useful, attract fans, and then they may become the focal point. I don't think that the attention should be necessarily on you. That's not what I'm suggesting, but on the idea, right? On what will emerge, the thing, the business, the concept, the product, the problem, right? Bring attention to that, and then start to attract fans who advocate for it, who then eventually become maybe your business partners, maybe people who are willing to jump on your team, maybe people who become customers, maybe people who just transmit the information, transmit the knowledge, right? This is a simple one. Just be likable. The world is already hard. Life is already difficult enough. It can make you happy by talking to other people and getting them to respond to you. Even if they tell you that's a dumb idea, have a smile, be likable. You cannot do sales without having some likability. Don't try to be the smartest person in the world. Have some humility, be humble, avoid arrogance, avoid hubris. Just try to be likable. And it can't be that hard for people to do this. If you're likable, you already have an advantage in that someone will give you a few minutes of their time. Right? Ideas need to grow. So you have some crazy idea, you got to put it out there, right? And let the ideas form. Don't be reserved. Don't think, oh, I've got the greatest idea in the world, I'm not going to tell anyone, right? By the way, you should use everyone who's participating in this session. I strongly advise that you also attend Ricardo Pereira's session on IP, especially if you think that for some reason your ideas are so brilliant that you should not tell anyone. Right? You should also attend the session on funding, right? Because that's Emanuela's partner, Paul, will be conducting that session. So those go hand in hand, because this is the other thing is people who want to do a startup, people who have a brilliant idea, they don't want to tell anyone about it, but then they want to say, well, wait, I need to only talk to people who are going to give me money for my idea. Forget it, not going to happen, right? Nobody cares about your crazy idea. You got to go and tell everyone, let the ideas flow, let them grow. That's what entrepreneurs do. Between today and tomorrow, we're going to have people present their ideas and their concepts. As I said, and Warren knows this well, and Manuel does, and Gabriel, we tell everyone, we'll give you the source code because we know how hard it is to succeed in business, right? anyone who calls me, they want something. I can give them everything in my business. I know that they cannot succeed. I know how difficult it is to succeed. There's so many factors. I'm not worried about the idea. The execution matters, right? That's what matters. That's what gets it done. Don't be a spectator. Obviously, we have a huge audience of spectators. They probably dialed in thinking, oh, this was another startup entrepreneur, right? We have a whole community. We have a whole global thing going on, what I call startup tourism, and startup as an entertainment, okay? It's not entertainment, right? Don't be a spectator. You gotta run, don't watch, okay? So you're participating in the session, you're listening to a bunch of very experienced and mature people who have had lots of success in life. We're not spectators. We're actually doing what we're saying, right? We are entrepreneurs. We will always be, and I will be an entrepreneur, and I'll be launching businesses and growing businesses to the day I die. I want to have a heart attack with hitting the enter, right? For some business thing, the last dollar, last penny, last euro, boom, enter, then I drop dead, all right? That makes me human. That makes me alive. That makes me participate in the global. I am not a spectator. Don't be a spectator. If you participate in these sessions and somebody gives you the opportunity to present, take it, right? Execute. Talk to your peers. Throw your ideas out there. It doesn't matter if they're dumb. It doesn't matter if it's sparse. It doesn't matter if it's a mistake, right? You're there. People will know you. People will develop. People will criticize. But don't be a spectator. That's not what business is about. That's not what entrepreneurs do. Even if you're going to have an academic career, right? You can't sit down and just read papers. You got to write papers, and then you've got to do poster sessions, and then you've got to get beyond the poster and get into society and do something of value. Make it popular, make it real, make it useful, right? So don't be a spectator. Stop, see, and do. Ignore the hidden voice of fear. Right? This is what prevents each of you from fulfilling the maximum potential you have, not just to be some of the smartest people in the world within your field, but to make your brains useful for some purpose beyond your peers. You got to stop, see the world around you, and then do something. Ignore the voice of fear. We live in an era of tremendous fear now, right? And that fear benefits some, but for the most part, it controls everyone else. And this is a huge opportunity, right? My effort, and Warren knows this very well because he's helped and participated. We had a business targeted to a particular country. We saw that what was happening with COVID, him and I and a group of people said, we're going to solve this. We kicked off 3 projects, all technology related, to try and solve some of the core issues that we noticed, to address the fear, because the customer had fear and they weren't acting. So we had to address the fear before we can get them to think about the opportunity. The ones that think about opportunity within the current environment are going to win. When you look at some of the largest and most successful companies in the world, they all made tremendous investment in times of crisis, in times of chaos, right? And so this is your moment. Each of you need to be thinking about how to get beyond the fear and actually move towards an area where you're actually creating value and getting back to the essence of business, which is to be an entrepreneur, which has to do with your own humanity, right? Now, to me, socioeconomic awareness, this is understanding the people around you. When you go out, you know, I love being, when it rains, I go outside, magically umbrellas show up, right? And I'm ready to buy as many umbrellas, right? That's, when you see that, you look at those people with, I look at those people with admiration, right? Because they're participating in the economy at the most basic level. And sure, there's a lot of stress and there's a lot of difficulties and challenges they're going through, but that's my family. That's where I come from, right? So practice living. You've got to look around you. When you see someone who's trying to make a euro, right? It doesn't matter where they came from. You need to look at those people, connect with them, understand what they do. I learned when I was first started going to Pisa, and Gabriel knows this very well, right? I would go to the guys. I'd talk to the guys who were selling me the little things, the little widgets, right? To understand, and that I learned from them. I actually reconnected, and I started to understand. Oh, what is it that they do? They see me as a customer. They know I have money. They know it's raining. I have an umbrella. They're going to convince me that the little umbrella is better than the big umbrella, or the big umbrella costs more money, or they send me a little umbrella and then I buy the big umbrella, right? They go through a whole process, and that whole process we're going to go over in the second half of today's session. So you start to understand what is it that people do when they sell. And this is common humanity, right? We all do this. Let your voice be heard. You've got to scream out above the crowd. If you're going to be a spectator, then encourage others. Don't be negative and don't be critical. You're not doing it. If you're not doing it yourself, then you need to be quiet and just clap. Right? And so when you see your colleagues trying and they're put themselves out there, support them. Right? That's how the world gets better. There's a few people who are courageous enough to do it and get off their butts and try to make a difference. And those people need to be celebrated. They're not to be put on a pedestal. They're not to be idolized. We have a few personalities that everyone knows. I can't stand those people because it's about them, not what they accomplish, not about the team, right? So you need to clap loud and encourage others, but encourage the whole group, encourage the effort, the whole effort around the solutions and for the problems that each of you may take on using the substantial capability. We live in an era where computation could make such a huge difference for people in the world, but it's also a nuclear bomb, right? And so unfortunately, we have in our community those who engage in activities which are not helpful to humanity, and we have those who are trying to do good, and they don't understand the unintended consequences, right? And so we need to constantly evaluate what we're doing. We need to constantly celebrate the successes, but we also need not to idolize individuals, and we also need to recognize that sometimes some of the things that we do at a large scale have unintended consequences for society, right? And we need to take responsibility as technology people to address that, attack it, and make it better. And there's a lot of opportunities to make the world better within our community, and I'm hoping that the people who are attending will take some of those problems on, right? The last thing is you gotta make it contagious, make it a habit. It's something that you have to practice every day. So again, pitching, selling. It could be any idea. And if it's not working, you throw that one out, you start with the next one. But pick a big problem, right? And in your daily practice, have a conversation on solving those problems in a way that can transmit out to society and makes everyone, can benefit others and also benefit yourself. Okay, so now let's go back to the, let's see here, let's go back to the panelists, yeah. So, let me see here. Can I see? Oh yeah, okay, good. So comments, Warren, Gabriele, Emanuele.
Right, this is Warren. I think, you made a lot of good points, and I want to circle back on a few things. You talked earlier about sort of the ideal that people around the world use entrepreneurism just to make ends meet. And I agree with that fact that we're not born entrepreneurs. It's something we learn. And I think whether you go through academia corporations, whatever your training is throughout life, you got to keep on having that openness to move out of your comfort zone, develop skills that are going to help you through that journey. And if you are dedicated to doing some entrepreneurial activities, making a difference in this world, and really forging your ideal, you got to be comfortable with change. And the irony is that in this world that we live in, change is constant, but we kind of live in this ideal that change isn't happening. So I guess all I'm saying is sort of, to be a great entrepreneur, you need to be listening, yes, but you also need to be open to change and pushing yourself out of the comfort zone, because that's where you're going to learn. That's where you're going to excel. But it will be painful. So also with eyes wide open.
All right. Gabriele and Manuela, do you have any thoughts about what we just talked about?
I saw a raised hand. So. Okay. Yeah, just a couple of comments also to what Warren was just mentioning now. I think that let's say in a general sense, even the umbrella seller that Ray was mentioning in Pisa, I think that if there is one thing that I learned, as I will always say this as a thing, because like I really believe, and I still have to learn a lot, and I really don't think that I actually learned totally what it means to sell. But what is really, really important is that I believe that is a learning path. Okay, so that is really, really important. And in the learning process, on top of the aspect of listening to the others, there is also one thing that is the fact that you have to engage, first of all, yourself, when you have really to believe what you're trying to, about what you're selling. So you have to really believe in what you're selling. You really have to believe that that is the thing that somebody else needs and the world needs and your audience needs. If you don't believe on what you're selling, you will never sell anything, because is the easiest thing to realize for the other person is that actually you're not believing in what you're selling. And if that happens, it's going to be impossible to sell something. On the other side, if each of us think to the last thing that you bought from somebody, from a seller, you would realize that the moment that he hit your brain and make you realize that you actually need that, it was exactly in the moment that you realized that that person, that in your brain you realized, wow, that person is actually, let's put it this way, he's telling me the truth. He's not trying to fool me. He's actually telling me the truth. Okay, and it's just like one example. I landed from abroad 2 weeks ago here after 4 months of lockdown abroad, and
you're in Madrid now.
Now I'm in Pisa, but
Oh,
I've been in,
Pisa. Okay.
yeah, I'm back in Pisa. I've been in Madrid for 4 months, and I landed in the airport, and I entered into a optics shop because I needed to buy contact lenses that I didn't have for 4 months there, because I have mine that have that shop that is. I entered there, and the seller looked at me and he said, of course, like I was with my glasses and everything, I was with my mask, my glasses were super foggy, and he told me, you know what, we have the liquid, we have the cleaner for the lenses that for not making the lenses foggy. And he said, you know what, and I was like, fuck, like he's like, here we go again, that he's trying to sell me something. I will not get into this now. And then he looked at me and he said, you know what, it really works actually. And he said it in an expression that then I thought about that after I bought it and I was walking in the street. I said, he got me only for one reason, because he looked at me in a way that actually that expression was like, you know what, I know that you think that I'm selling you crap and every time I'm trying to sell you something, but this time, believe me that I tried it myself. So I can promise you that that stuff works for real, even if
Yeah.
I'm trying to sell everything. And that was the
They
point.
probably
And
looked at you right in the eye as well, right?
exactly. So that is the point. And then I just have one comment that about the concept of market fit that comes again and again in this conversation. It's really important to find a market fit also for one reason. As also Ray said before, there is a lot of noise nowadays, and there is really little time, and people are confused by a lot of information, a lot of noise. You have to be really selling really fast. So that guy got me in the 1 second that I entered in that optic, and I entered in the optic twice a year. So he knew that he had his chains, So for finding a market fit in a really fast way, if possible, the best way is always to find a market category to relate to, because if that market category exists and the other person know about that market category, that becomes really fast. And then so the following step is try to find the best example, the most common example for that market category. Once at the beginning of our journey with our startup, we do IoT applications for industry or for B2C market. I've been there trying to explain to a guy that is a marketing guy, but he doesn't know anything about technology. I was trying to explain that we were making this IoT application for checking temperature of refrigeration applications, for tracking the temperature for the regulation stuff, and also for making sure that your fridge was working perfectly, and blah, blah, blah. I've been talking probably for 5 minutes just to say what was my project about. And he looked at me and he said, "Are you doing the Nest for the industrial refrigerators, the Google Nest for the industrial refrigerators?" And I said, "Yes, I'm doing that." From that moment on, every time that somebody was asking us about that application, that was the thing. So try to find a market category and trying to find not necessarily the best in class, but for sure the most common, okay? Because if you are doing something with speech recognition for activating something, just say that you're doing the Amazon Alexa for the optics, or whatever, the Amazon Echo or something like that. That becomes like really easy for the other to understand, and then you can focus on the values on that.
by way of comparison. Yeah. Emanuela, do you have any thoughts you want to share?
I need to spend a couple of minutes to explain difference between being competent and selling something to someone because you are really knowledgeable and you are the person that can solve that specific problem or fulfill that specific need, from being a manipulator. So when you are a sales guy, you have to have good values, because it's really important to for everybody to understand the difference between selling something in the short term and building a long and profitable relationship with your client base, which is the key to success, right? So you have to be, you have to have good values, and you have to be competent. So when I'm saying good values, you have to be honest, you have to be transparent, and you need to be competent about your industry or your sector. And then for the guys, just to sum up what Ray was saying, another book for you guys from my favorite American author, which is How to Win Friends and Influence People.
Yeah, that's an old one. Yeah, that's a traditional. Yeah.
Yeah, but even
there's a lot of wisdom in it. I mean, a lot of these books you have to sort of understand how to interpret the stuff. I mean, when I wrote my books are kind of super dense, and I just didn't understand how. I think the books are useful, and that other faculty use these books in their courses, and they've created classes and programs against it. But I do, the books that you are showing are books by authors who are very good about taking 1 or 2 points and really elaborating in a story way, so you create the episodic memories. You really get the point. Dale Carnegie is it's a very good communicator. What I want to do now is turn to, before we turn on to an example of how to sell, right? I do want to make a distinction, a very important distinction Emanuela is sort of highlighting, and that is that when I'm talking about selling for this audience, okay, I am grossly simplifying it to the most common activity that every human does, and we can all observe very easily, right? What Emmanuel is highlighting is that while that's interesting and it might be useful to get people to start thinking about the journey, that the actual sale in our community of technology is somewhat complex, right? And so in the sense that it can be very nuanced, where you need to have competencies to explain some aspect of, for example, the organizer Cohen, who's going to be on the call. You know, him and I were emailing back and forth about internet access, and I was describing opportunities with doing channel bonding, right? To have reliable internet. I mean, you have to have a background. That's very specific, and I was, you know, just a strategic discussion that involves lots of technical things, which requires competency of both the two people who are discussing it, but then also the nuances of how would you actually enter the market with that, right? I'm not talking about that aspect. That's a much more advanced topic. We need whole sessions on advanced selling and selling complex solutions at the enterprise level, right? Most of this is very, very basic and very rudimentary, because again, if you cannot sell a very basic thing, forget about trying to do a strategic sale, because you need to understand so much about people and how they work. And as Warren was describing the psychology, and then as Gabriel was describing, you know, the audience, Emmanuel is describing, he's a master. I mean, Emmanuel created his own company with his partners, developed technology, raised some money, sold, and then sold his company, and now he's helping other companies fund. So we're hearing it from a master guy. And even he, in this talk, is deferring to books that he's reading, right? He's constantly learning, and he knows all this stuff. He could write his own book, but he's reviewing over and over and over, right? These sort of principles and ideas and thoughts, and expanding and filling in gaps, right? Now, there is, what I want to quickly do is, there is someone, thank you, I'll mention the person's first name, although I think everyone could probably see the questions in the chat. Kim, thank you for your questions. I want to address your first question, which is, I'll read her question verbatim, right? Selling what people need is good, but it is also good to sell what people want. Want is not always the same thing as need. How do you think about the difference? Okay, so I'll try to answer that question directly from sort of a common experience, okay? I have a sweet tooth, okay? I'm a carb addict. I love bread, right? But I also have a health condition where it's probably not good for me, right? And so what I want is, you know, tiramisu, right? I want to eat that for breakfast. I want to eat that all day long, right? In fact, when I go to Europe and I'm in, you know, one of these hotels and I go to the breakfast thing, I see cake with coffee, right? And then I see eggs and other stuff, right? And so I need vitamins and nutrition, but I want that cake, right? So what's the balance, right? Because I could either sell cake, make everyone fat, right, and happy, right? Or I could sell vitamins and everybody's sort of super healthy, but they have indigestion and burping up, you know, sort of fish oil, right? Which isn't very pleasant, right? So those are two extremes. The way I solve it is the way I've solved that problem for my own needs, right? Is I say, well, okay, I can't really have cake every day for breakfast, and I can't just live off of vitamins, right? I want both, right? Because we're humans, right? I'm human. I want it all. I want everything. I want nutrition, and I want to like it, right? So I've figured out a balance. I have natural fruit, and I might take a little bit of ricotta cheese, fat-free, right? So I get the satisfaction of the fat, right? I get a little bit of sweet. I get some nutrition, some carbohydrates, and so it's both, right? And so when I talk about selling an umbrella, right? There's a tremendous variety. I need an umbrella. Yesterday was thunderstorming, right? And I don't want to get sick. but I don't want to use my wife's pink umbrella with polka dots, right? Because I'm a big guy, you know, I have strong features. It just doesn't fit my style. It's perfectly fine for people who want to do that. It just is not my style, right? It's not my preference. I want a big sort of beach umbrella, just black, plain, right? And so, yes, I need an umbrella, but I don't want the pink polka dot umbrella. I want the big black beach umbrella, right? And so it's both. And in the technology realm, we all know that the products, and I'm just making a blanket statement, right? A lot of the products that are out there are not the best ones by far. They satisfy a need, right? They are highly marketed. People believe that they want them. We all, look, let me show you something. I don't know if you can see this. Look at my phone. I'm not going to flip through all the screens. You know how many of those apps I actually use? I think yesterday I downloaded 3 games. I haven't used any of them, right? I want the games to entertain myself. But in the end, all I need is a tethered hotspot. So it's a really good point, but this is the point of sales and marketing, is that in terms of developing products, if you can only sell to the need, people are unlikely to buy, right? You've got to sell to the need and to the desire and to the preferences. And oftentimes what that leads to is products which are highly compromised, and they are products that are what I call good enough, right? And this is one of the challenges that we have in technology, right? Because, and Warren probably knows this, because Warren has seen this with me. We have a great working relationship, and Gabriel knows this very well because he's got some incredible engineers on his team with his company. You know, we want it secure, we want it reliable, right? I want to over-engineer every solution, but we got to make money, right? We don't have 5 years to figure it out. We can't solve, you know, use OpenSSL. It's got bugs everywhere. Put a fuzzer on it. You'll see. Say, I can't use that for banking. It'll get hacked overnight. So guess what? I'm consulting with a company. I go fly to San Jose. I got the investors, lots of money. I tell the developers, no, you're going to use that. We got to fix the code, right? So now we got into 3 months. I got to have to get the best person who knows. They got to go and understand the code. They have to fix it, right? And so we have a need. We make use of it, right? It's all fine. I want it perfect. Certain things you cannot compromise. But then we have the face in the user interface. And I said, no, we're not going to spend 3 months in it. First, just hack together some website. I don't care about it. But the best security, we're not compromising, right? That I'm going to invest in. That I'm going to get the best people for. And that we're going to fix the code, right? But the user interface, we're going to change every week, all right? So need and desire. Excellent question. I'm glad you asked it. Let me see it. It looks like Kim asked. So Warren, Gabriele, and Emanuele. Well, maybe Gabriele first, because we also have this problem in Xamarin, right? Which is this just challenge of need versus want. We know that the community. So why don't you comment on that, Gabriele? And I know Emanuele and Warren will have lots to say about this.
The comment, let's say that the consideration goes back to what I was saying before. Like the key point is a mental switch that is the most important thing from thinking that you should tell your story versus try to sell the solution of a need that comes from the story of somebody else. And that works in B2C, in B2B, in everywhere. So in our experience, the switch happened at the moment that we realized that trying to sell by doing a evangelization process of our technology was really not the need, because people, in our case, we sell IoT tools and technology. People don't need IoT tools and technology. People need to solve an issue, and people need use cases for understanding. So that's the big switch happened when we realized that instead of telling the features and the great benefits of our technology, we started explaining our product, our offer through real case scenarios. And of course, as we were saying before, the real case scenario fit with the story of your audience and of your potential customer, the better are the chances that this customer like goes and think like the possibility to buy that. If I was not wearing glasses, or if my glasses were not foggy, what was the point for that person to sell me that product? And that is the thing. And if he was starting me telling me the formula of that liquid and how that liquid was preventing a glass surface to get foggy, I would have stopped listening to him after 3 seconds. But going to the point means, first of all, especially when you have something that is a technology that is a new technology, is around a potential new need that is popping up on the market because of other opportunities that are coming. Like, as long as you don't get to the clear story to listen and you translate your market offer into a use case scenario, that is going to be super hard, because what you are asking to the other person is to listen to you, understand what you're doing, understand what you're saying, and then translate what you are saying into his own situation. You're asking too much, because then you will have to ask for money to this person as well. How much stuff will you want to ask to this person? So do all the job and just ask for money in the end.
Yeah. So, all right. So just in the interest of time, Warren and Manuel, I want to go to the next question, let you guys sort of respond to the next one. So there's a person, Kim Peterson, thank you very much for your questions. Please reach out to me after the session and connect with me directly on LinkedIn. I'd like to know more about your work and your thoughts. Appreciate you sharing your questions to the group. These are very insightful questions. So I'm going to read her questions, and then Warren, maybe, and Manuel, maybe you guys can respond to this question after I sort of comment. She says, when you talk about sell, what is the situation you are, oh, wait a minute. Okay, when you talk about sell, what is the situation you are thinking about? Selling an idea to a financier probably needs one tactic. Selling to a company probably needs another strategy. Selling to a consumer probably requires a third tactic. Can you please elaborate on how to think about sales for different situations you see? That is a very, I somewhat answered that question when I said what we're focused on is very simplistic sale to consumers in this discussion, because that's the common thing that everyone can observe. But it certainly is the case, and Warren knows this very well, because we actually have 2 presentations that we do, one for business and one for the technology, because we're selling to 2 different audiences. But it's very clear also that when we sell to investors, that's a completely different presentation. And there is a way to sell to them, which is not like selling to consumers, right? And then when you sell to the enterprise, that is certainly a third way to sell to a company, right? So, and oftentimes selling is not always selling to a buyer, but you also may have to sell to a supplier, right? Meaning that you're not necessarily paying the supplier, but you have to engage the supplier in a partnership. And then that requires a different sort of process, right? And then Emmanuel can probably speak to the supplier selling to another company for which is not going to pay you, but you need their involvement and you need the agreements, you need to sign the contract and all of that stuff. So Manuela, maybe you could speak to the partnership sell. Warren, maybe you can speak to selling to investors versus selling to the companies or the consumers that would buy a product. So Warren, why don't you try to address that question first?
Yeah, so we talked a little bit about this earlier, and I like this concept of being on the same frequency, right? If you think about radio transmissions, if I'm broadcasting at one frequency and you're listening at another, we're never going to communicate. And that's just sort of basics. And that happens all the time. But I think when you talk about how do we approach the investor, what is the value proposition that they want to get out of this deal, right? I want money from them. They want something that's going to sort of provide them a great ROI, return on investment, fast. If I don't understand their motivation and their value proposition, if I'm not in their mindset, or we talked with Gabriel and Emmanuel, if I don't understand their market fit, I'm going to be broadcasting probably on the wrong frequency and portraying the wrong value proposition. So there's like the basic ideal. Unfortunately, what this means is you can't just come up with one concept and one story that you keep on sort of applying no matter who you run into in this world, whether it's investors or consumers or customers or partners. You've got to tailor the message and you got to get on their frequency, which means you need to do your homework, not just even about your own business ideal, but your homework about what is the motivation of the party you're speaking to. Because at the end of the day, if we talk about investors, they're hearing from hundreds of people. And I'll just share with you personally, I used to get very frustrated as an entrepreneur coming up with what I thought personally was super creative ideals. Why in the world isn't somebody going to give me an hour to sit down, listen to these ideals? They're earth shattering and so forth. But that was all in my mind, right? When you start to get to a point where you need to find other people outside of your own cave to collaborate with, or to give you an asset like investment or whatever the case may be to help your business actually materialize, you got to start to understand. You got to tailor the message to their frequency, get them across the line, build a value proposition that benefits you and them, and therefore you start to plant the seeds of collaboration. So of course, investors, very clear, they want to know the facts, they want to know the money, they want to know how credible you guys are as a team or the ideal, and how are they going to get return on investment or pass that risk on to somebody else. Consumers, we're very illogical people. There's a great example where it's the same service, but we're not going to talk numbers. We're going to talk about, like Kim was talking about, how do we drive things that they either need or want? People are pretty irrational, to be honest, in this world. So how do you figure out within your solution how you're going to provide a benefit to those consumers and get them sort of into a mode where they start to use your service as a habit? So frequency matters, and value proposition and understanding the mindset of your target are those three sort of pillars that are pretty important.
Yeah. So Emanuela, you want to, you sold all over, multiple countries, cross border, and when you were growing Win Medical, you had lots of suppliers as well, and some of the sales that you did were actually channel sales. So, just comment quickly on selling into a channel. Like, for example, when you sold to the channel in Turkey, for example, how were you able to do that? What did you have to sort of pitch to them and sell to them?
I suppose I agree 100% with Warren. It's all about the value proposition. So you have to adapt the value proposition to your potential partner or your potential client. The reason why we were good at selling our technology was because, first and foremost, there was a clear market need, there was a clear market fit, and we understood what were the real, let's say, goals of our partners. So once you understand their goals and their objective, and if they match with yours, then it's just about to reach a good deal. To I would say it's more, to me,
once you understand the market, you understand your partner, you understand the opportunity, you understand what it requires to be successful, to sell your product or your service into the market. In our case was then to work together with our partner to better define even their sales strategy adapted to their local market.
Yeah, so that's interesting. So you actually, in the sales process, you were actually teaching your partner how to sell the product that they were going to then sell into the market.
Could be part of the process.
It's selling the training to sell, right? Because they need to understand the product and its use and things, right? So that's actually, again, that's much more advanced. I mean, you know, for the purpose of the audience, we're talking to panelists who are masters at this. So,
Ray, the only thing is,
let me put nuances. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Let's put things into context. So we're talking about the medtech industry. So you can sell as long as you can prove that your technology has been clinically validated, has been market validated, and at the same time, you have to work with them to go into, let's say, a hospital setting and show them that it's working, is reliable, and is what I call walk the talk. Because another thing which is really important is, even if you, let's say, have a good relationship with your potential partner or potential client, right? And your value proposition is spot on, then you have to walk the talk, which is all about execution, right? So you have to convince your partner or your client, and then you have to go through the entire process by basically meeting all the, let's say, or fulfilling all the promises or all the agreements that you have agreed on with your clients or partners.
Yeah, okay, so what I'm gonna do now is go through, I mean, all of you have seen this sort of 1 minute. I'm gonna do a pitch. So again, I practice what I'm saying here. I'm actually do a pitch in 1 minute in terms of, it's a 1 minute pitch on how to sell anything in 1 minute, all right? And I'll go through it, and then what I want to use the remainder of the time is let each of you actually go through the process of, you know, selling your respective, well, I mean, each of you have many businesses now at this point, but just pick one to represent, to kind of sell very quickly, and then we'll open up for Q&A, you know, to sort of marching towards the end. All right, so let me share the screen again. Okay, so all right, good. So what we're going to do is, all right, so we're going to sell, I'm going to sell a fidget in less than 1 minute, right? And if anyone who doesn't know what a fidget is, they're going to find out, they're going to recognize it, because this thing showed up all over the planet. I don't know how, but it showed up everywhere almost instantly. And as I traveled from city to city, I kept on seeing this one thing. I just thought, I wish I had thought about that. So, right. So I'm going to take the role. I'm going to describe. So I'm going to take on a role, a persona, go through the whole journey in 1 minute, and then I'll go through it again to explain each, right? And so again, this is role playing for the purpose of instruction. Okay? So I'm an industrial designer for children who are hyperactive. I invented the fidget. It's a spinning toy that helps the mind focus. Unlike mobile app games, it avoids digital addictions by building kinesthetic learning. It's now available globally online from all street vendors. You can buy now, you get 2 for the price of 1. I'll include a free dog training course. And if you like to sort of exercise, would you like to exercise your fidget? I can also sell you a fidget exerciser thing. And then come back and show me all your tricks. Show me the tricks that you've learned how to do. All right. In 1 minute, you can see. Now let's go through it again. All right. In addressing, Kim certainly asked questions. Again, this is by the way, I learned this by going and talking to people who actually were selling these things in the streets. And I was trying to understand, what is it that they did? Like, how were they so effective? How did they sell so many of these things, right? And so the first thing is, who are they, right? Who are you? Who is your customer? So when I was, for example, walking down the, Corso Italia in Pisa, I would see that the people selling these, they were always doing eye contact with the children, even though the parents are the ones that are going to buy it, right? And so they knew who they had to appeal to. And then the parents understood, oh, okay, if I get the kids kind of spin, then they'll leave me alone, and it'll preoccupy them, right? What is the need or the desire? So you see kids are, have too much sugar, right? Exactly, what is the product? What market category does the product fit in? What's the benefit? So one benefit, one problem, one product, one market, one benefit. What is it competing with? All right. So the parents didn't want their kids on the mobile phone all the time. So how do I get them off the mobile phone? Because they're only 3 years old and they're already addicted to the games on the phone. And I want them to do something physical, right? So how do you avoid digital addictions? Why is it unique? How does it work? Right? So you explain the how of what it is. Where can I buy it? How do I create the urgency to buy, right? Because I can walk away because I see these everywhere. So I've got the, selling it, I have the person's attention. Now I got them this far. How do I get them to take the money out of their pocket and to give it to me, right? As Gabriella was describing the glass cleaner guy, he said, the guy looked at him in the eye and said, this stuff really works, right? But he didn't necessarily get him on price. He got him on usage. And then what else can I sell you, right? Because if you're going to buy it and I see you reaching for your pocket, maybe I can get you to buy this little pamphlet on how to train your dog. And then I can also get you to buy something that costs even a bit more, right? A few more euro. Because then I'll pull this out and say, oh, okay, you can actually exercise and do it really well. And then I give them an opportunity to come back, right? Come back, bring their friends, and buy more, right? So I took them through the whole journey. Right? And keep in mind, I did all of this. Look how many points I touched in less than 1 minute. You can time it, and I can do it again, right? And when you get somebody's attention, the point is that in sales, you need to be able to do this really well. And if you can practice this in 1 minute and do this well, then you have an opportunity to get to the next level, which is to sell something a bit more complex. And then the level above that is what Warren and Gabriel and Emanuele work on, which is the strategic sale, which involves many of these things, right? So what they do is, what I'm showing you here, in one sale that's strategic, there may be 10 versions of this against each audience. The supplier, the various suppliers, selling my family, selling the people on my staff, selling my partners, selling my customers, selling my investors, various investors, corporate investors, financial investors, selling partners and channels, right? And so, and each one has these components in slightly different ways. Okay, so I'm going to go through a second example just so that you see it in a slightly different way. Then we'll open it up for discussion. Okay, so. Right, I'm going to do it again, but for a slightly different product. And then we'll let everyone sort of present. Okay, let me see here. Share screen. Okay. All right, good. So how do people sell? What do they do? All right, selling the idea, make everything as simple as possible, but not simpler. This is the Occam's razor rule. So I'm a visual artist selling photography gear for the professional photographer that wants to distort an image. Lens Baby is a creative lens that blurs the picture. Unlike expensive quality lenses, it's a cheap, creative modular lens kit that can tilt, f-stop, and filter. It's available online or find photo shops. You can buy it now for $99 pre-order. Tell all your friends. What about the special filters? Show me your photos to post. And okay, now. Let's see here. All right, so let's go. We'll go through it again just so everyone can see. All right, so we review it again. All right, so here again, so who am I, right? Situate. So when the guys, they'll explain first who they are. They'll talk about who they're selling to, their customer, what need or desire does that customer have, what product or service that they're selling, what's the market category. And as you hear them speak, just think about these things, because they may not say it in this order and they may not say it in this way, but when you hear them describe their businesses, they will touch upon each one of these points implicit in what they talk about, right? What the benefit is, who the competition is, why is it unique, how does it work, how can you buy it and where can you buy it. This creates some urgency. What's the takeaway? How do you cross-sell? How do you get them to come back? All right, now, I want to turn it to each of the guys. Now, keep in mind, they are not selling consumer products. So what I just showed you really is very focused on consumer products, as Kim, who asked the question, sort of highlighted, is implicit in her two questions that there are various ways of selling. But I wanted to show everyone two examples of how would you sell a consumer product, and then extrapolating from that, you can abstract from that, right, things that are slightly more complex. So bear in mind that what the guys will talk about are complex technology products that are not consumer products and or services. And therefore it may not conform to what I just showed you, but each element would be sort of implicit in what they describe. Gabriel, you want to go first, and then this gives Warren and Emmanuel a little bit of time to sort of prepare. I don't know, do you have any slides on Zarinth, or you just want to speak to Zarinth, or you don't have to show slides, you can have slides in front of you and just make it conversational. But if you can do it in 5 minutes, if you can do it in 5 minutes just to explain what is Zarinth. First of all, who are you, right? What's the company? The whole bit. You can touch upon the point. You co-taught entrepreneurship with me at the university, so you know this very well. So why don't you go through it first, and then Warren can go second, and Emmanuel can go third.
Sure. So I don't have slides. Actually, what I did.
You don't need slides. Just do a conversation.
Yeah.
I'm saying if you want to put something in front of you in terms of the screen, just to guide your conversation, you can.
Sure. So since I remembered, and I cannot forget those slides that you shared, because those are the slides that I saw first time around 5 years ago. Actually, what I did is that I wrote our 1 minute pitch while you were telling them before.
Oh, great.
So I can guarantee that I wrote my pitch in 1 minute while you were saying the 1 minute pitch and on how to pitch. So that's the only thing. The only thing I would do before is that since let's share another another big issue in the sales process in an entrepreneurship. What is really hard is try to find sound names that have not been picked by others. So I know that Zerrin it can be hard to understand the spelling. So I'm writing here
chat. Okay, so
in the chat.
Yeah, for
Okay,
those,
so that I don't need to share the screen. So you can go on Zerrin.com and you can see what we do. I'm an entrepreneur. I hold a PhD in management engineering. I'm based in Pisa. I did my management engineering PhD on innovation and how to build entrepreneurship initiatives from university and academia. And after completing during my PhD, I realized that the only way to really understand and dig into this was doing it myself. So that was my epiphany moment when I realized that I wanted to be an entrepreneur, and
and did someone tell you that?
No, I just realized it myself. Okay. But let's say that there were all the conditions around that. They were just that one day I just said, okay. So I just didn't open my eyes until now. I will try to tell you what Zerrin does in 1 minute using a scheme that Ray, the scheme that Ray shared with you today, and another one that is really, really effective to me. That is the value proposition. The value proposition architecture that probably Ray will tell you tomorrow in the other session, or I'm pretty sure that you can find in the slides. So just 10 seconds of context. Developing an IoT solution is painful for every engineer because it involves a lot of technologies and skills that have to be glued together. So Zerrin is an IoT platform for developing connected products and solutions that allow engineers in product companies to build IoT solutions in an efficient and highly integrated way, unlike other IoT platforms like Particle and Electrochem. So this is what we do.
So break down the components. Go through it again and break down the components, right? So
basically,
so who are you? Right. Let's go through. You know, who's
exactly.
the customer? What was the need? What is it called? What's the benefit? Why is it unique? Right? Who are the competitors?
Exactly. Something that
so that they understand. I mean, you did it in 1 minute, which is very clear, right? That's actually what I want. I knew that you would do that. I knew that you would do that. So what I want you to do is just say it again, but then tell them what you're saying. What component are you addressing?
Sure. An introduction of myself, as I did, a bit of context that is needed here, because I don't know the audience. I cannot see your faces. I don't know if saying IoT, you're smiling or you're like understanding what I'm saying or not. And that is actually an example because the audience.
Audience.
Exactly. Yeah. So that is just an example because I know very well what is the audience here, but as an example. So of course a little bit of context on why we are doing this. So we are talking about IoT, embedded application. We know that we are in a world where technologies have to be all connected together and glued together and integrated in companies, architectures, and infrastructures. So the context here is that we are trying to solve the issue of having different pieces of technologies that compose the IoT, hardware and software, and let them glue together and work. So that is the context. So what is Zerrin? Is an IoT platform because somebody before us decided that was the market category. So this is what I was saying before. So just that is the market category. That's your solution and your product. Okay. For developing connected products and solution, the 4 is fundamental because that is like the aim. So the scope of your product. Okay. So 2 elements. Is an IoT platform for developing connected products and solution. And here we explain what is the solution about and mention also what is the target. Okay, so that allow engineers in a product companies to build IoT solutions. Okay, so we are talking to engineers in product companies. We are talking to product companies, and in particular to engineers, because we know that in a company we should know who we are targeting, okay, in a B2B application. Then I mentioned in an efficient, highly integrated way. I could have said it in many different ways, but that is the point where you try to highlight what's the difference between you and the others. That is the unlike part. That has to be really strong, because the unlike part helps you, or at least like I realized that it helps a lot, because until that moment probably there is part of your audience that is not getting the point of it, unless you just declare who is your competition. Okay, so if you don't have competitors, you should ask really yourself why you don't have competitors. Or are you sure you don't have competitors, or are you sure that you selected the product, the specific product category? So unlike other IoT platforms like Particle and Electricam, so they are more famous than us, just go see, like remember what Particle does, and you would you would realize what we do. So these are like 5 points that help a lot in giving the context in a really fast way.
Yeah, we so just before we go to Warren, and then I want to close with Emmanuel. The company's journey, okay, you started out, I'm assuming it's okay to disclose this, but you're about to raise money, okay? You're about to close a funding round in the worst possible time in the planet to raise money, but you're doing it, right? And when you started your journey, your original journey, I remember you were a young guy without a beard in one of my courses, right? And you're a good example of the room's full of 250 people. One guy shows up, young guy with his eyes wide open, with his faculty and a whole team. And then we go on this journey, and eventually he ended up teaching with me side by side in an MBA program. And you weren't even finished your PhD. And then you don't remember, but I was the one who told you, if you're going to teach entrepreneurship, you better be an entrepreneur, right? Because everyone else was teaching entrepreneurship and wants to play startup, investor, blah, blah, blah. And they never started a company, right? And they're trying to teach this stuff, and they're not entrepreneurs. And I said, you have to be an entrepreneur if you want to teach it. Then you went on to go with the whole team, apply for European funds, and then started a whole entrepreneurship program on your own while you're actually starting a company and growing a company. And you didn't take, all along you said, Ray, I want to raise money. I said, no, bootstrap, sell, build a product. That's what you did. So you built a company the way I did, the old-fashioned way. No investors, customers, right? This is the way to build a company. And now after you have a company, then the investors are knocking on your door. Say, please let me give you money. I said, okay, we're gonna let you invest, right? And so I just wanted to make sure to put that out there. The other thing is, in full disclosure, I have a little bit of equity in the company, right? And the only reason why I had Gabriel come, because no one else raised their hand to present. So guess what? I'm an entrepreneur. Nobody wants to present. I'm going to present my own companies, right? So normally I wouldn't do that, but because people didn't raise their hand, I asked Gabriel to present. Now, the thing I want to say also about Zaranth is that not only are they making an entry, he's got huge companies who are after them. They weren't acquired because he kept on growing the company, okay? And this is an entrepreneur like everyone in the audience, okay? He right out of a PhD program and started his first company right out of the gate. Okay, he never worked for a big company. He's selling to he could go, Gabriele can work for any large company on the planet in technology, right? He said, no, I don't want to work for those companies. He said, I want to sell to those companies. They're going to pay me, right? And that's exactly what he's doing. So he's a modest guy, so hopefully he's not too embarrassed with my with my promoting. But I'm an entrepreneur. I got to promote, right? And so I have my way of selling. All right, Warren. I don't know if you want to talk about Honeycomb, the blockchain. I mean, you're involved in so many different companies. Aside from your own consulting stuff, do you want to talk a little bit about one that we're doing together or something else?
Yeah, I think we could just outline this agent commerce model. But very quick, like Gabriel said, I'm originally from Silicon Valley, but I've been living abroad and working across Europe, Southeast Asia, and North America for half my life, based in Finland at the moment. Corporate career with Apple, then investment banks, and San Francisco, London, New York, and a decade or so with Nokia before it sort of moved on to other issues. But I think that was the birth of my entrepreneurial path, and it was a painful one. It was also, just to share with the audience, they say you should have one failure before you'll succeed. I went out after the corporate world, gave it my best shot, thought I was being an entrepreneur, walking the walk, walking the talk. The company didn't succeed, but it didn't fail either. But I thought I ticked the box. But I didn't realize until later that you really need to fail by pushing the envelope, not just by going through the motion, before you really understand what it means to be an entrepreneur and the highs and lows, and trusting your gut that if you believe in the product you're building, you keep going until a point that it succeeds. You navigate it to the point where the market meets your vision. And that's the real spirit of entrepreneurship. But I'm going to talk a little bit about agent commerce, if I have my 1 minute clock started now. So even with sort of mobile commerce today, last year reaching about 2.4 trillion in revenues, and an unbelievable growth path that digitalization of mobile commerce has presented. Over 50% of the planet still does not participate. They're left on the sideline. And you've got a situation where financial institutions want growth beyond that $2.4 trillion, and they want to access all these 50% people of the planet. And conversely, that half of the planet wants access to the digital economy, but doesn't have the tools or means. The strange thing about this is, in this day and age, when we can have a computer or a device in our pocket which has more computer firepower than it required to land on the moon, we still can't solve the problem of driving everybody into financial inclusion in the digital economy. So we've estimated that even with the growth of mobile commerce, the cash economy and driving that into a digital format represents one of the largest opportunities on the planet. Approximately $50 trillion or so if we were to drive all cash transactions into digital formats for the future, and realize the benefit of bringing every person on the planet into participation and financial inclusion is a massive win, not only for humanity, but for individuals themselves. So we've built a three-sided digital marketplace, which brings together merchants who have goods and services to sell, agents, or think about human mobile points of sales who are armed with a mobile marketplace and distributed across the country and the planet to be able to sell and collect cash transactions for their neighbors, their friends, their relatives, and consumers who don't have traditionally, that 50% of the planet don't have access to the digital economy, a route to be able to not only pay for a digital transaction and get services like you and I might enjoy in banks and credit cards, but through the mobile, distributed mobile point of sales, be able to participate in that economy. So this marketplace brings a network together of people with a common interest who have the ability to store value in the network and more seamlessly transact with each other for a given purpose. So we've built a mobile app, we've assembled a network of agents with that mobile app and a value stored for their trading balance who work around their community to book sales, airtime, pay water bills, electricity bills, buy Wi-Fi, whatever the case, everyday goods and services out in their community where they hand cash to the agents book the sales on their behalf, and for that, they're participating in their first e-commerce electronic transactions. So we believe that this is something that is massive, because if we bring 50% more people to the party in the real true digital economy, the economy GDP will dwarf whatever today's existing banking infrastructure provides. Sorry, that's in a nutshell.
Yeah, Speaker, this is not actually the first time you're doing this. You want to speak a little bit to what happened in Indonesia, because that was a business that you and I and a few others started. And I won't go through the whole journey, but it's one that I actually walked away from after the initial launch, for many reasons, spread myself too thin. But then you actually grew that business to something substantial in Indonesia. So what you just described is actually not, I mean, it is a future vision idea that can have dramatic impact on an economy in the emerging markets and frontier markets, but it's actually not something that's new, because you actually have already done this before in another country.
Correct, and a limited sampling footprint. Yeah. So I think what you're saying is actually interesting. The banking community wants access to this $50 trillion market, no kidding. And they throw millions of dollars in investment and new applications and ways to hook people. Getting back to Kim's comment about needs versus want, they want this market, but they can't figure out how to secure it. And one of the things that we sort of found out is, rather than trying to deploy systems that work on the street corners of Los Angeles or Ontario or France, all around the world, in Western markets are established, they don't always apply in Lagos and Jakarta and various other places of emerging markets where the economy is really ground up. So I guess what I'm getting at is the competition, even with their big bucks funding, fail to crack the code in the emerging markets and this $50 trillion market, because they're just shoving the same solutions from the cloud down to the ground and expecting it to work the same as other markets. And this actually goes back to exactly what you were talking about earlier, Ray, with market fit and also tailoring the message when you communicate with somebody. You got to do the same with your business. Think of the established market, tailor it to the attributes and requirements of that market, and respect the market that you're deploying into. And when you have sort of Zen synergy with that marketplace, you'll find the right solutions. And in this case, we built solutions that kind of reflected on the ground how people operated in informal networks, and arming them with a bit of technology and a way to connect each other over this network through mobile apps, and giving them a purpose of something to do, buy things that they normally would have paid or traveled 3 hours across town to do. We made it convenient. We made it easy. We made value portable. And from that, we lifted over $1 billion in sales off of the physical streets of Indonesia into a new class of internet transactions. And that's just the beginning of the process. We believe that sort of a GDP in a digital economy would be 1,000x, 10,000x of what we as a planet do today.
Yeah, we're on our way with a big value proposition, and you and I and Michael and Josephine, and we're spread all over the planet, and we're sort of chipping away at this slowly. So thank you for that. So Emanuele, I want to hear you have Paul kind of running his session, right? So why don't you talk a little bit about, I mean, don't repeat what Paul's going to say about the funding stuff, but why don't you talk about your journey from, Win Medical, selling the company, and then, Lyra, but very, very quickly, right? Because it's people maybe joining the funding session and they're going to hear this from Paul, but go ahead.
Yeah, so I co-founded Win Medical in 2009 with other co-founders who had a very strong technical background. We went from zero to exit. Win Medical was developing an innovative wearable medical device to monitor the most important vital signs in real time and wirelessly. We started from zero, and after almost 1 year, we had the first version of the product CE marked. And we started the pre and post-clinical validation within the first 2 years. We raised money from investors and regional, national, and European funding schemes. At a certain point, we had 15 people working for us, a strong IPR, and then 40 active installations in 4 Italian hospitals, 4 international distribution contracts, and we ended up selling the company at the end of 2017. The company, or better, the product, is doing extremely well because of the pandemic, because there was an incredible boost for telemedicine and remote monitoring of patients. Then when I left Win Medical after selling the company, I worked for the most successful Irish startup on Indiegogo ever, called Buoyant. It's a great success story because 8,500 backers from 90 countries all across the world, 3.5 million euros collected through the pre-purchasing of the product, in just one owner with 100% of the shares. The reasons why I left, it's for another day. Then with my co-founder, Luis, teaching a course with all of you guys, we set up Lyra in September last year. So Lyra is a company selling services to high potential, high risk scale ups that want to raise money from the European Commission. In the first year, our objective was to get and to acquire 30 clients. At the moment, we have 25 active clients. Paul and I are the 2 co-founders. Then we have other partners. We have Chris based in London, Jim and myself based in Dublin, Nicole and Paul based in Croatia. Our expertise is to work on what was known as the SMA instrument. Nowadays it's called the Eic Accelerator pilot. And for the very first time in its history, the European Commission is not only providing grants, but even willing to put some equity into those companies. Companies that have to be SMEs, have to be high risk, high potential, and non-bankable. The application process is pretty complex, and it requires the expertise, experience, and knowledge that those companies they don't have. That's why we offer those services. The Eic Accelerator is the most coveted program in Europe. The overall success rate is only 4%. The way we work is we offer our services through setting up a team of 3 people, which is the project manager, writer, the graphic designer, visual narrative specialist, and the editor working on the proposal, because it's a set of documents. So a main proposal, a pitch deck, and a financial template, because companies are invited to sell the same story through text, images, and financial information. That's what we charge. We charge an upfront fee and a success fee. Our criteria are straightforward. We want to work with companies we go through an internal due diligence with, because we need to assess that they really have a high potential and are non-bankable, and then we onboard them. And those are the companies we helped to fund through the EIC. One is 3B, machine learning, IoT for beekeepers. The other one is GeoVox, automation of property management. And then we have QPQ, Credit Logic, Cerebrium, and other companies. Then we have our testimonial. So that are the guys in charge of the companies, because we deal with the founders. And then we have a really valuable network of business associates and partners. And one of them is what I consider the best IP strategy company in the world, or at least in Europe, which is Eic. So thank you very much for your attention.
Yeah, and that's Ricardo Pereira. He's going to be presenting the IP patent session. So you're partnered with them. Also, he's one of our colleagues, dear friend as well. Okay, so it looks like Rohit asked a question. So let's go to Q&A. And then once we have exhausted all questions, we can end the session. I'll close up with well, maybe what I should do now is, Xavier mentioned internships. So I have a number of companies. You see that Emanuela has a number of companies who are his clients. Gabriele has Xeranth, and they're looking for internships. And Warren, he talked about one of the companies we're doing together, but he has another one that he's building in the blockchain space, and others he's involved in. So certainly anyone within the group that is looking to do internships or get involved in something like that, you're welcome to reach out to us. I would say that as far as I'm concerned, if you have to be an entrepreneur, that's what I look for first. And as I'm defining it in this talk, you got to be able to sell yourself, right? What Emanuele described, and the reason why he gets clients engaging with him is because he knows how to sell, he knows his business development. And even if you're going to go ask for money and public funding, you need to be able to formulate something that's coherent. And again, they put you in front of an audience, and if you can't sell, you're not going to get any money. And so that's actually, he didn't say that, but that's actually what he trains these companies to do. And then he's had success with it. So that's internships. The second thing is, Nico, you can share the video at the end whenever it gets compiled and gets down to a size for all the people that didn't attend who may want to review it afterwards. And certainly all the people who did participate, if they want to go through a couple of points again and review it, use it, share it, you're welcome to do that. I assume that all the panelists on the call are fine with that. Is that okay? Gabriele, Warren, Emanuele, you're okay with sharing the video?
For sure.
All right, good.
Yeah.
Sure. All right, good. And then lastly, we're going through this relatively fast. Tomorrow, we'll have the panelists will actually be very experienced people coming from a different perspective, much more from academia. There's at least two who are entrepreneurs within academia. They still are faculty and trained. And then we have, an esteemed person who is within academia but doesn't think of himself as an entrepreneur. But I think tomorrow, I think he will, I'll describe what an entrepreneur is, and I think he'll also agree that he probably fits that profile. What I may do is go over a complex sale. So the question that Kim asked will be addressed tomorrow in a much more nuanced way. Anyone who didn't attend today's session will probably be lost tomorrow, but they should join anyway. They'll get something out of it. And then I guess lastly, all my material is freely available. All my books can be downloaded for free. I've helped set up incubators and accelerators in New York, and also went through a whole journey in Pisa with that. And Gabriele actually got funding from the European Union to set up an accelerator as well, and then also published a book as well through a whole group. So if there are people within university settings or institutes or companies that want to try and do this type of training for their students or folks or researchers, reach out to me. I wouldn't necessarily do it directly, but what I would do is train the trainers, and I've done that for other schools, essentially get faculty in a room so that they can include, and also in companies, so they can include the various notions and techniques of training, identifying and training entrepreneurs, because I have this notion of entrepreneurs create other entrepreneurs, right? And this is a kind of work, the purposeful work that I do now, where I spend time with entrepreneurs, where they get to the point where they train other entrepreneurs. Gabriele is doing this in his own company. He knows the people he hires have to be entrepreneurs. We know that out of Xeranth will come a number of different companies. Warren knows this very well because we've had a previous company, all the people we hired them went off and then created their own companies. And you could see with Emanuele, he's already doing this. He's an entrepreneur, and then he's going and helping other entrepreneurs, right? And so just as a general kind of closing statement, I want to get to Q&A. And so I'll start with Rohit. Other people can write questions that they have. So Rohit said, how to sell your product to investors if you're targeting a very niche market where big guys like Intel, NVIDIA, Google have dominated the market already, from my experience, investors ask for a working prototype, but being a student, I don't have much resources to develop one. If you have just an idea on paper, you're out of luck. No investor is going to talk to you. And I give you the brutal, direct answer. Don't waste any time chasing investors. Sell other students, sell other researchers on your idea. If you can convince them that it's worthy pursuing, because it's based on your research or a collection of research, and you get a team of people who then build something as a prototype, don't do it on your own. You've got to convince other people. So if you can sell, that's the whole point of the whole session, which is if you can sell other people to join your team, and then as a team, you create something as a first prototype to make sure that it works, then you have a chance, right? Don't worry about what the big companies are doing. Look, all the companies that Rohit mentioned, Intel Capital, billions, they acquire they fund the whole industries. They don't invent the stuff, they buy it. NVIDIA is a little bit different. But they do sponsor and they do fund research. I've had former students who did contests in NVIDIA. That's a little slightly different. Google acquires a company every month. I mean, like, I don't care about these big companies. That's who I'm going to sell to as buyers, or have them acquire a company that I build. But I'm not interested in what big companies do. They're already done. They're set. I have zero interest in big companies. And I don't care about them. I don't compete with them. Whatever I do, I'm solving big problems that they're not solving. And so, Rohit, I wouldn't worry about it. Build your prototype and figure out how to sell your colleagues first. If you can sell your peers to join you in some open source, look at how many things have come out of the open source community. And you can do a non-commercial sort of research-oriented prototype, and then also sell commercial licenses. You start with services, and you make money selling that, cash, and then you use that to reinvest, and then eventually you then hire your team, and you can build from there. So there's many different models to get you started. Don't give up on your idea. If you've got some research that's really valuable that these big companies are not doing, go for it. Don't hesitate. But don't waste any time talking to investors. They're not going to listen, and you're wasting your time. All right. Gabriele wanted to go investors. When he had his idea, I told him no. I said, build a company, sell customers. Exactly what he did. Years later, he's getting investors. But that's after he has a company and he's got revenue and he's got a bunch of people employed and he's got a whole community, and they're doing really difficult stuff. I mean, they built a virtual machine that runs on microcontrollers. How many people can do that on the planet? We know of maybe 3 in the entire planet who could do that. And one of those guys happens to be one of the founders of Xeron, right? That doesn't mean that other people aren't capable of doing it. It just means that only 3 people have actually done it, right? And so there's a big company that's probably going to acquire them eventually, as they grow. They've already told some companies, no, we're not interested.
Ray, can I say something on that?
Yeah, go ahead, Emmanuel.
So that's in all fairness, this is the typical question I hear all the time. I meet up with recently graduate students or PhD. I suppose there's an issue in Europe because the message conveyed by institutions is you have to write a business plan, you have to go to investors, and you have to raise money. That's wrong. Exactly. Wrong. So once you have your, let's say, first MVP, and you have your even a small user base, and then you keep on growing the business, you'll see that investors will come your way because you've tested the model, you're growing the company, and you are in a position where you can decide to get investors on board to scale up the business if you need them, or to keep on doing that to organically grow. And I suppose there's something that we should be doing with institutions, basically to help the guys understanding that sometimes the limitation is a mental limitation. And it's like, okay, so I need to understand, do I want to be an entrepreneur? I have to take risks. To take risks, that means that I have to fail, right? But when I fail, I'm going to learn my lesson. And as Ray was saying, is to build something, sometimes to require to work in a team, and then to become smart. We have 90% of our clients, 90% of our clients have really small investors, and they're keen on getting more and more grants. And even nowadays, companies and investors, sometimes they work together to define their grant strategy, because it's a good way to leverage funding for companies to grow without diluting their equity and still be in control of the company strategy.
Yeah, excellent, excellent. Okay, so so Rahid thinks the question got answered. Thank you, Rahid, for the question. Let's close out with the poll. Let me see here. I can we'll do if everyone, there's like 43 people remaining, that's pretty good. We started out with a little bit over 50, and we're close to 2.5 hours. This is the other thing is final statements on closing statement, right? Entrepreneurs show up. Obviously, the ones who didn't show up are not entrepreneurs, clearly. So good. Immediate filter, love it. That's what I want. I'm glad. And then the ones who reach exhaustion and quit, gone, finished, all right? So anyone who still remains, right, who maybe they're doing other stuff and they only have it in the background, it's okay. But we got 43 potential entrepreneurs. That is really good in a pool of what, 280 that registered, right? That's why I told Rahim, don't worry about the competition. They eliminate themselves, okay? We're gonna send out a poll. Only a few of you are gonna answer. So we just reduce it even further. And Echo's going to send out the survey, and very few are going to actually respond to the survey. And now look what happened. Within 3 hours, we identified all the people who are potentially going to be successful as entrepreneurs. And we just removed out of the whole population tons of people. There's only going to be like 2 or 3%, 2% if we're lucky, right? That's why of those people who end up being entrepreneurs, don't worry about your peers. They're not going to do it. They'll have all the brilliant ideas. They won't do it. They're just going to waste their time, spin their wheels. They are not going to be, they might do other great things. They might go work for big companies, and that's all great, but they're not going to be entrepreneurs. Right? So we're going to launch the poll. Hopefully some percentage of people respond. We'll see what the results are. I just launched it. If everyone can answer, we'll get some results, and then we'll close up, and we'll reconvene tomorrow. Let's give 5 minutes. Give 5 minutes for people to. I think the panelists can also respond as well. Yeah, we'll give it another. Oh, another book. All right, you got to send me all these books. That's it.
That's how I prepared, my speech for today, because I learned with a couple of young guys how to do webinars. So you have to keep constantly the attention of the audience. So every time you have to present something new and valuable. So I thought, okay, for people with an academic background, they can talk about entrepreneurship, but every now and then, try to share with them the books that are really relevant for you as an entrepreneur, because you're absolutely right, you have to keep on learning. So at least they will remember, oh, there was the mad guy showing us the books, right?
Yeah, so Paul, who's going to be presenting, and Paul is Emmanuel's partner. He asked the question, what kind of personality in sales? I meant external, the charismatic external personality that's, you know, the life of the party, the one who sort of speaks a lot. That's what I meant by personality. Those people who would say, oh, they have a lot of personality, right? So they're not quiet and shy and, you know, internal, or the extroverted is a term. All right, good. So we're on 2.5 minutes. The people who would have responded, I think, so 60% of the group voted. So that's pretty good. That's more than 50%. We have a pretty good group, actually. Yeah, so that's good, actually. I'm actually surprised that many people responded. But let's see. So have you ever sold anything? 13 out of the group. So that means there's a couple of people in industry who still remain, or people who have startups, or who understand business. 8 said no, that they have not sold anything. So it's undetermined for the rest. That's okay. And then, so sales for people who have external person. So the thing is, it's interesting that people still believe this, right? And so just from the talk, you can see these skills are you can learn how to sell, even if you're the most bashful, shy person, who has lived a life of privilege and luxury, and have never had any adversity and never had to make any money ever. Even those people can learn how to sell, and those people will need to know how to sell at some point. And so there isn't a specific personality that makes people good salespeople, right? It all is dependent on the context, the product. Emanuele talked about competencies. Some people sell just from force of skill, right? And so actually the way I learned business wasn't because of who I am or how I look, right? It was just sheer force of skill. Put a bunch of developers in the room and I write code really fast, really clean, and everyone else then starts using the code that I wrote. In fact, my first company, it was one of my employees had told me that 70% of the code, after I had 300 people in the company, about 80 of them were engineers globally. One of my employees told me years later that 70% of the code was code that I wrote years later, right? And so you can sell through force of competency, and you don't need to have a particular personality, right? It all depends, especially in the technology realm. So you can be introverted and be effective at sales, right? Would you ever need to sell anything in your career? 4 people said no. That is shocking that after 2.5 hours, anyone would say no. So reach out to me, because I'll spend a little time with those 4 people. It might be people who are already retired, maybe, that could be, that they're well advanced in their career. But if they're in this session, then they likely are still selling or have sold, or don't realize that what they do is to sell, right? And so if you're a faculty and if you get grants, if you submit a paper, right, to a journal, in effect, your abstract is selling that journal that you're credible and that paper warrants being published, right? It's not selling to money necessarily, but it's, as Kim highlighted, there's many, many different ways of selling it, many different contexts. All right, good. So I think we're down to 2.5 hours. Let's see, is there another, I can share the results. Okay, and okay, didn't close out the question that Rohit asked. Okay, so I already answered Rohit's questions. Okay, so no more questions. Those are the results from the poll. And thank you everyone for joining. Thank you to the panelists. And again, hopefully, hope to see everyone tomorrow. To the organizers, if you're still on the call, if you have any feedback on this session, please send it to me directly. Aneko, who thanks to him, to the co-host, who is very helpful in organizing this. And we'll see everyone tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.